All right, I am going to finish the video lecture part here. Basically, what we're going to cover from is where we left off on Monday with some of the notes. We stopped right before the Kansas-Nebraska Act, and I'm going to get you through basically to the end of this unit. Okay, now a lot of this information is from your pages that you will be reading, so I am high pointing those out for you. Okay, pages 398 to 405, and then 440 to 455. Okay, as we go along, you have your note outline, and you will also be able to follow along with that. Okay, I did not get through in seventh period when I covered Uncle Tom's Cabin, so I'm going to start with that, and then I'm going to get to the Kansas-Nebraska Act. Okay, we ended up kind of overviewing abolitionism. Okay, and we talked about a few other people here, Harriet Tubman. The North just wanted slaves to be free, to work in their factories, and then this colonization society in which they wanted to send all the blacks back to Africa. The last one was Uncle Tom's Cabin. It was a book that came out in 1852 by Harriet Beecher Stowe. Basically, what it did was it depicted the reality of slavery. In which many Northerners and many people in the U.S. did not understand what the slave life was like because they did not live in it. The South basically came out and said this is a bunch of crap, it's full of lies. But the North started to realize, oh my gosh, this is true. They're first-hand accounts from slaves and from former slaves. And they kind of begin to see the evil of slavery here. Okay, I'm going to progress now through the Kansas-Nebraska Act. If you ever need to pause, that's the beauty of this. You can pause whenever, but I'm going to keep my same speed here. Okay, we've talked about the Missouri Compromise, okay, which essentially put our border right here and said, okay, Missouri, you can be a slave state. Maine, you can be free, but there can be no slavery in any of the Louisiana Territory. Basically, what we're going to look at and see is that this Kansas-Nebraska Act overturned it. Missouri Compromise was 1820, about 34 years later. Okay, the idea of another Band-Aid. Okay, just a temporary fix. Sectionalism to a T. It just temporarily fixes it, not a long-term solution. Okay, so this was passed in Congress in 1854 here. About 34 years after the Missouri Compromise. Basically, this comes back to this popular sovereignty term. Okay, what it did, okay, was it allowed these territories, okay, the Kansas and Nebraska territories, okay, the idea of popular sovereignty, or the fact that they'd get to vote to decide if they should be a free or slave region within their borders. Okay, so they're giving them the choice. Obviously, that's going to upset the North and please the South, but it's a Band-Aid to kind of, appease, or look good, or, kind of give in a little bit to just have a problem solved or put a Band-Aid on it. Okay. So it allowed these territories to decide for themselves, vote free or slavery, popular sovereignty. Okay. As I mentioned, the South supported it, and the North very much angered them. Okay, but again, we'll see this term repeal or reverse. Okay, this Missouri Compromise. Initially, everyone was okay with the Missouri Compromise because Henry Clay stated that there could be no slavery in that region, and it'd make everyone happy. Now this is overturning it. Okay. It takes a lot to repeal an act. I mean, we've only had one amendment to our Constitution that has been repealed, and that was when they abolished drinking and alcohol. Our 18th Amendment, our 21st Amendment repealed it. Either way. Okay. Again, just so you kind of have that idea, no slavery was allowed north of that. It repealed the Missouri Compromise. In regard to that, on your note outline, it says below, Stephen A. Douglas believed in popular sovereignty. It's highlighted. I left that spot for you just so you can put that in. The Kansas-Nebraska Act was the idea of popular sovereignty. Just put your little definition there. Okay. It allowed a vote to decide for your slavery here. Okay, I'm going to talk about a couple things that came of the Kansas-Nebraska Act, and here's some terms. I will link this PowerPoint slide or these slides onto Schoology, in which this video kind of breaks it down. It's a little TED Ed cartoon. It's pretty good, but I'm just going to explain it here. On your sheet there, it says Bleeding Kansas and what it was. Essentially what happens is a couple things have to happen first, but why it's called Bleeding Kansas, just that idea of blood being shed. And this happened after the Kansas-Nebraska Act was passed. And basically, to sum up Bleeding Kansas, it was just a violent protest or violent fights, either for or against the popular sovereignty action being passed through Congress. Okay, one way in which people were voting illegally, you must add, okay, is right below where it says border ruffians. Okay. Now imagine on our map here, I'll flip back, okay? There's people from Missouri, and this is what the border ruffians were. All right, were people from Missouri that would illegally cross borders, border ruffians, okay? Rough at edge, all right? Missourians that would cross the Kansas territory, and they would vote illegally pro-slavery. Okay, so let's say I'm a Missourian. I'm going to cross borders and vote for slavery in Kansas. Now that's illegal. That is extremely illegal. Okay. Right now I live in Waterloo. I am registered to vote by Blackhawk County. I cannot go to Bremer County or Buchanan County or anywhere else and vote. That's illegal. It's called voter fraud. All right. So ultimately, border ruffians, people that crossed the borders and they were voting illegally for slavery. All right. One other thing too below it, an idea of John Brown. Basically, who he was an extreme abolitionist, which we talked about, ones that were against slavery. He was a different route. He believed that God chose him to end slavery. He just took more of a radical approach. I'm going to tell you a story here in a second about killing some men with a sword. But he felt that God called him upon to do that. Okay, so John Brown, an abolitionist, what he did, it says on that bullet point there, what he did. Him and his sons felt that they were called upon by God, and in the middle of the night, this is stemming from the Kansas-Nebraska Act, he goes down to that territory. He pulls out 5 white slave owners out of their bed in the middle of the night, and him and his sons kill them with swords. Because that's really the only logical thing to do. And even in today's age, that would be the logical approach. So either way, what he did, and we're going to see him again. He strikes again. That's a little bit lower on the outline. But stemming from Bleeding Kansas, okay, he goes down, pulls pro-slave owners out and a bed, and they murder him with a sword. Okay. The Brooks-Sumner affair, this is an interesting one. I've mentioned it, and you can kind of see in the picture here. I'm just going to kind of give you the overview or the nutshell. Okay, on your sheet here, Charles Sumner. All right, he was from Massachusetts, a northern state, and they were anti-slavery. Okay, there's another senator, Preston Brooks, South Carolina, pro-slavery. They're the first state to secede. Okay, basically what happens is this anti-slavery senator, Charles Sumner, gives a speech and basically says all this stuff that happened in Kansas, the border ruffians, Bleeding Kansas, everyone rioting. That's wrong. It shouldn't have happened. And basically calls out Preston Brooks and says, it shouldn't have happened, and kind of bashes on his cousin a little bit, who's another senator. And basically, so here's what happens, right? Charles Sumner, anti-slavery senator, bashes on another pro-slavery guy, all right? Then Mr. Pro-slavery gets mad, walks into the Capitol building in Washington, D.C., okay? Charles Sumner's sitting in a desk, in a chair that's bolted to the ground, which he really had no wiggle room really to get out in a heat of the moment. And he gets beat to near death by a cane by Mr. Pro-slavery Preston Brooks. And he kind of hangs on for his dear life in that sense. Pretty wild when it's all said and done. So what this does, again, ultimately, it just fuels the fire, and it really allows the nation to see that slavery is this, kind of this big issue that's upsetting a lot of people. Okay. Is it the only cause that the South is upset? No. but the South feels that it restricts their rights. Okay, so we're back to John Brown, this handsome fella. It kind of reminds me of myself. Just the picture, not what he did. Um, there's this place called Harper's Ferry. It's a military fort in Virginia. You can still go today. It's beautiful. Um, but he wanted to raid the military fort or an arsenal. Okay, if you see the term arsenal, generally in the military words, it's like an armory where weapons are being kept. And he led 5 blacks into recently freed blacks and 13 whites. 5 of them were his sons. Into this military fort. Okay, and they planned to raid this arsenal. And basically, what they'd end up doing was they would start to equip the slaves, and they had slaves working there for them. Okay, so the idea was, okay, we'll raid the arsenal, get the weapons, we'll arm the slaves, and then we'll revolt or overthrow this place. There was a problem with that. No slaves really rose to revolt. Put John Brown in a difficult situation because it was just him. He was ended up, all of them died, all of his sons died, and they ended up keeping John Brown here, the ringleader of it all. He was tried by court, found guilty of murder because he did end up killing a few of the guards, and then treason, basically meaning that he was going against our country. Hi.
Hi. I check my email?
Yeah.
I didn't get anything.
Oh, I'll resend it. I'm screencasting. Sorry.
Oh, good. I interrupted.
This is Miss Carr's interrupting me. Yes, so no problem. And okay. Anyway, and he was later hanged. He was seen as a martyr, though, if we ever see this term as a martyr. Basically, what a martyr is somebody that dies for something that they believe in, or they die for standing up for the right cause. Is a martyr always seen as a hero? Not necessarily. He was to the north, but not the south. Okay. The South saw him as a man of treason. Okay, or going against his own country, betrayal. Okay, a traitor in that sense.